Alright, welcome back to Super Sentai Review, episode number 480. I think this is 488. Yeah, 488. Here we're discussing the movie that came out just after, Boonboomger came out. That being Boonboomger versus King-Ohger, which pretty much runs the cast of both series. Excuse me. If you're curious, though, this was, in fact, the most, I think, like the second to most recent Sentai film released, because it was released around the same time as they released a film for Gojooger. I believe so, because I think it was released the same month. Yeah, and it's the second and final movie release for Boonboomger. First one was released during the course of the show, and the second one, this one here, was released after the show concluded. And this also was the 30th Versus movie ever released. Released on May 1st, 2015. 2025, excuse me. Yeah. And then the Gojooger movie was released, I think this was, just 2 months later we had another Sentai movie. Yeah, this is nothing unusual for Sentai to do this, where they have a cross movie and a standalone movie for the show released the same year. This is nothing unusual. In the case of basically King-Ohger, this takes place after their team up with King-Ohger, because of course we return of a particular monster from basically that particular series. Yeah, surprisingly, in the case of Gojooger, well, they only bring back technically one monster. Yeah, one. And it was a monster that was never actually destroyed in the show, which was interesting to say the least. Because, as far as I can tell, this was the only one of those rare occasions where you have a surviving villain. Like, it doesn't happen very often for these Versus movies. Like, where somehow we have one surviving villain. So you're probably thinking, with the first Versus movie, do we have any, like, someone who actually fought the Rangers, of course, the show came back? Well, in the case of Kakarot versus O-Ranger, nope, just a monster similar to it. Same thing with O-Ranger versus Car Ranger, basically a monster for them. You think, okay, so what was the first time this ever happened? We have one of the villains who's actually on the show itself, came back in a Versus movie for the team where that current series teams up with the following series. The first time this ever happened was actually, believe it or not, and I kid you not, this was the first time this ever happened. That being Time Ranger versus Go-Go 5. In the case of that one, it was because they had brought back it was one of the villains in the show. It was actually Time Ranger's solo movie they ever released, which is interesting. And that character was Spellmaster Paré. Yep, that was the first time they ever did it, where they brought back a villain from the previous show to fight him in the next show. And you might think it did happen with Gal Ranger. No, there's no team between Gal Ranger and Time Ranger. What about Gal Ranger, Hurricane Ranger? Yes indeed. They brought back two of the surviving villains. Well, the thing is with these two, they apparently were killed in a cave-in, and then they came back in the following show. Though one of them basically was brought back once again, and they kind of ignored this appearance for some reason in the Boonboomger movie. You're thinking, okay, what about Hurricane versus Abba Ranger? Villains-wise, no. Not really. Okay, what about Abba Ranger and Deca Ranger? Did they bring back any villains in this show? I don't think they did. Excuse me. Well, it just... I think it's a trailer of like, oh, we have this unknown villain they just happened to team up with. That being Trivoid, basically one of the villains for that one. Okay, what about Deca Ranger and Magi Ranger? Well, the villain was basically associates of the villain from the previous show. Okay. Their anniversary. I would say Gecko Ranger and Boonboomger. I would say yes, they did bring back the main villain of that one. Yeah, Ball came back now. That was the second time that happened. What about Go On? I have with Go-Onger and. Okay, what about Boonboomger and Gecko Ranger? No, not thinking. I don't. They did back one of the villains. In the case of Gecko Ranger versus Baku Ranger, Boonboomger, excuse me. Well, they did not. It was just a character they just happened to find. Okay, what about the very next season of the show? Did this happen with well, in the case of Go-Onger vs. Gecko Ranger, yes, this definitely happened that one. It was because the villain technically wasn't killed, so basically I'm gonna count it. Alright, what about Go-Onger and Shurikenger? Well, they did remake the original villains, but not the final villain of the show. No, he never came back. I would say in the case of Go-Onger, kind of, yes. Well, what about Go-Onger and Shurikenger? That was a kind of. Because they had like another villain, but they brought back our villains in the show, so that was a kind of. Okay. What about Go-Sager and Shurikenger? Yes, they did. They brought back Octoroo's counterpart. Yeah, he came back for that one. What about Go-Kaiger and Go-Sager? Not necessarily surviving villain for this one, because by the time that Go-Sager ended, all the villains were dead. Basically, this one had a thing of resurrection. Okay, what about Go-Kaiger and Go-Busters? Relative. Go-Busters and King-Ohger. No, not think of no. What about King-Ohger and Tokuger? That one basically did something similar to this movie did, where it was something was up in the show itself and was fall up here, whereas basically it was just a villain. Okay, what about Tokuger and King-Ohger? Was the villain from Tokuger coming back in that one? The main villain was some exile person, but he basically brought back the villains in the show as clones. Now I'm not sure about King-Ohger and Zoologer because I haven't seen that yet. King-Ohger, King-Ranger did not have a team up with Zoologer at all. I don't know about the team ups for Little Ranger, for Panther Ranger, or Rice Soldier because I haven't seen those yet. You're thinking, okay, what about Dawn Brothers and King-Ohger? Villains wise, it's kind of weird with this one. Yeah, when they had the team with Dawn Brothers, like, was there like a returning villain from Dawn Brothers in this movie? Yeah. Not really. Yeah. It was a weird team up. But you might think, okay, what about their team with King-Ohger? That was mostly just filling gaps. what was really interesting. I actually like this one. So, this is probably the first time since Go-Onger and Shurikenger, where, actually no, Gekaranger and Go-Onger, where they brought back a surviving villain, who technically was destroyed, and they brought it back here. Yeah. So basically, here's what happens. So in this movie, so the Boonboomger are basically asked to come to Planet Tackle, which the plan was first mentioned in their very first movie they actually had, when Princess Nicole came to Earth. Now, currently, she is the queen. Because why not? She legally can become the queen because her parents are no longer alive. Sadly. So basically, they're there to be her body, basically to protect her. And well, there's also a thing called King-Ohger. You're like, okay. Yeah. And you think about King-Ohger. Well, in the case of King-Ohger, I think it's an item. Excuse me. Basically, in a way, it's a combination of... Okay, so... This was a device that was used by Reno Husky. Yeah. That's basically who used it originally. And somehow it got to this, again, the Planet Tackle. And the plan was to steal this. Of course, we also have basically Manhole Grimer, who just happened with Mayogan, which last time he was seen, he was frozen. Though he got unfrozen off screen. And mostly we have the later we do have the King-Ohger show up in basically the main mech from King-Ohger. Well, basically the palace. Which is interesting, the fact they bring the palace here and they just leave it on Planet Tackle. Well, the reason why, because it gets sent to Earth. Though for some reason, I'm not sure why this is. Maybe they didn't realize the fact they've been here before, because... Because, of course, how should I put this? Because the King-Ohger's been there before. Well, in the case of Blue, this was actually his third visit to Earth. Because he also basically visited Earth during a special with Gekaranger. Which they have pretty much... I don't know if that's canon or not, per se, because that's never brought up here. But I'm like, how can they forget their time when they visited with King-Ohger? So, basically, I went a manhole cover, where, by the way, King-Ohger is turned into a stress beast, which is not to the show. And they go both together. We have, first we go in, before they do, which was Gira, Toya, and Yalakar. By the way, the Lackey Seers are working for the Blue King-Ohger, which I thought that's interesting. Basically, they're basically his lackeys now. So, they go in together, basically, and then we have the two Blues, and they go in, and they end up at Toya's house. And then we have pretty much all the girls, along with Bun. Yes, basically, Bun Pink, King-Ohger Violet, Yellow, Bun, and Kurna of the Lackey Seers all go one. Oh, I almost forgot. Disgrace, basically, he goes with basically the Blue Rangers. Interesting, and Blue and Orange go with Black and Spider. And they just happen to be in the area where Joe basically just is a happy protector of. Which I thought was really cool, the fact they basically had a lot of nods to, well, Boonboomger, because that was show they just wrapped up, and basically this happened afterwards. Great, all the interactions. We see Shinobu again, which of course basically she obviously faints when she's Bun, when she sees Banderas. I thought was really cool. And there's even not from the show itself where, okay, they're after these regalia. Of course, they still the Cole's necklace, still the King-Ohger, which was interesting. It's still a device from King-Ohger for this. And then, like, okay, we need to find the third device, which, this is really weird when I saw this. I'm like, really? The third device is that mysterious ball that popped up toward the end of Boonboomger? I'm like, that's getting paid off here? Wow, an object that debuted toward the end of the show and paid off for this movie. Okay, that's interesting because the last time I ever saw something like this, where they said something toward the end of one of the shows, and it was followed up with in the next year's movie, was actually Tokuja versus Kyojo. Was the last time I ever saw these happen. That one was basically a person, not in the case of an object like this one. And the whole thing was to bring back the final villain, the main villain of the second half of King-Ohger, but that kind of happened. They used his essence to put him in Banderas' body, but thanks to Toya, it basically got out, which I found that interesting. And of course, they have a team up with Violet, which, it's back on Earth now. They're basically in the middle of the race. They haven't completed yet. They don't say how many planets, because they do say they have to pass by, they have to go around 12 planets for this race. As for how many planets they gone through, they don't really say, just that they pass some planets, per se. Which, good enough for that. King-Ohger, it's not much has happened since the team with King-Ohger. Yeah, not much. We do see basically them revisiting basically the Underground Kingdom, which is nice. In fact, see it again. We see Gira's home country. We do see some characters from Blue's Kingdom. Surprisingly, her butler Sebastian doesn't pop up in this movie. Nope, he's not here. Nobody, and Rita's friend is not here either, which is interesting. The fact that she's not here. Also, like, Gira's brother is not here either. It's like we're missing so many characters. King-Ohger. My guess is they probably couldn't fit him in because of time. I mean, they only could fit some people. The only people they brought back, they brought in Gira Saborn, who was basically like a prime minister of the country. They brought back him. They brought back some characters from Blue's country. I'm like, that's it? You couldn't bring back anybody else? Okay. So the whole thing with those three, with Gaara, Toya, and Yagakar, they're basically trying to get back to Earth. And they do, thanks to some screams, and then Toya basically brings out his car as a nod to the trade-off from the previous, that happened at the end of King-Ohger, where that one basically was too morphed and ride in his car. I thought that was really cool, the fact they had a callback to a trade-off, because that's the first time I've ever seen it. Well, we had but by the way, it was the same area too. That we had callback to trade-off, because that has never happened before, ever in these team movies, where they have this trade-off, because normally these trade-offs are basically in this black void, and it's like some light there, like usually like a high five or get into a very fight. That's kind of how they are basically in the case of, well, in the case of what happened with this one. Basically you just have Gar just hop into Toya's car, and this one's kind of the same thing, except they're unmorphed. They get back to Earth. They have the basically big morph per se, and they basically fight all the monsters. And of course, Moth is killed as a last hanging thread from King-Ohger, which really nice they did that. Surprisingly, it's like Rita didn't have much to do aside from bonding a little with Banderas. Yeah, she didn't have much to do. Himmel basically got a little bit to do with Mira, but not much else. The Blue Rangers, they didn't do much of anything aside from building communications equipment. Aside from that, they didn't do very much at all. Like the Super Rangers, they did a lot in this movie. I do mean a lot. I do appreciate though that Joe, Jeremy, and I kind of forgot the name of the Black King-Ohger. I'm glad they got stuff to do here, which that was really cool. And the fact that, well, and all these actors got great chemistry. And is it surprising you have a verse movie and we don't have the teams fighting each other? I'm like, wow, that's different. What a novel concept for a verse movie. Otherwise, it was a pretty good movie overall. And, well, there's still one more thing I'm talking about since before I watch My Dress Up Darling, and that being The Secrets of King Regulus. I probably won't get a chance to watch it. I'll probably watch first, probably Backstab Bakuage Dungeon first, okay? But see you all later. Bye.